I'm Gwyn. I also work at ECMWF, and as Christelle said, I'm going to be talking about the changes to the EFAS post-process forecast in EFAS version 5. But first, a quick reminder about what the post-process forecasts are and why we include them in EFAS. So the EFAS forecasts, unfortunately, as with all forecasting systems, have unavoidable errors and uncertainties. What the post-processed hydrograph is trying to do is to minimize these errors and to quantify the uncertainty in the aim to create a forecast that more accurately predicts the absolute value of the river discharge. So in EFAS, we do this by considering recent observations, recent simulations, and also some of the past forecasts and how they performed. We then combine all this information using a multi-model and a multi-method approach that considers errors in the meteorological forcings, the initial conditions, and the hydrological model. The end result is then a probabilistic 15-day forecast, which we call the EFAS post-process hydrograph. So as I said, the post-process method uses observations. So whilst the post-process forecasts are included in the reporting point layer, they are only available at fixed reporting points where we have near real-time river discharge observations and at least 2 years of historic observations. The reason for this need for 2 years is because the method requires an offline calibration. The calibration is performed twice a year, and any new stations are included at this point. And we need 2 years because the longer the record, the better we can estimate the errors and correct for them. So on the EFAS IS, you can tell which reporting points have the post-processing because they are light blue. The grey squares are stations where post-processing isn't available yet, but hopefully this will change. So this is an example of the post-process hydrograph from EFAS version 4. The post-process hydrograph is shown in the pop-out window of the reporting points, and it's shown by this plume with the darker blue colours closer to the forecast median and getting lighter as you get further away. So the dashed line labelled MQ shows the mean discharge threshold, and the red line labelled MHQ shows the mean annual maximum. The two smaller panels on the right show the probability of exceeding these two thresholds at each lead time, which you'll be able to see more clearly in the next slide, which actually shows a high flow. Okay, so that's EFAS version 4. So what's new in EFAS version 5? So the blue and grey squares haven't changed in version 5, so you can still see which stations have post-processing. But there are quite a few other changes. So first of all the stations have been recalibrated, and this is to tune the method to the EFAS version 5 system. And this resulted in 1,580 stations where post-processing is available, with over 1,400 using 6-hourly observations and about 150 using daily time steps. The next few changes were based on feedback from users. So there were some issues with some specific stations, so we changed the method for the calibration to better deal with missing observations. And so this has improved the scale and the ability of some of the stations to capture the dynamics of the river for some of the worst performing stations, but hasn't really impacted many stations. But then the biggest change is that we now include local river discharge thresholds, which are shown in pink in the hydrograph provided by on the right. So these thresholds are provided by EFAS partners, and so they are local thresholds that actually have some meaning to the people who are using the forecasts. So we can include up to 4 thresholds for each station. You'll see that we also still show the mean annual maximum and the mean discharge. And this is to provide some consistency between stations, maybe across boundaries or up and downstream of a river. So now you can actually see the bar charts on the right. You'll see that they show the probability of exceeding the mean discharge and the mean annual maximum on the right. But then we also have 4 box plots at the bottom that show the probability of exceeding the local thresholds labeled TL1 to TL4. Not all stations have all 4 thresholds, so if the threshold is not provided, it will say so, and it will be a blank box then if the probability of exceeding is 0. So we've also added some more information, which I'll tell you a bit more about on the next slide. And then finally, sometimes the forecast can't be post-processed because of lack of information or the discharge has exceeded the calibration range. So we've updated the information that you get in these cases so that it tells you why a specific forecast is not post-processed. So an important first note before I tell you about the additional information is that the post-process forecasts have been moved into a brand new tab. So this will automatically appear if you click on the reporting point of a station that does have post-processing. And the motivation for this new tab was to keep the raw and the post-process forecast separate and to not clutter the reporting points too much. So the more information I promised, we have 2 new tables also included. So the first table is a threshold table, and this is the one in the middle of the slide. And this shows all the thresholds shown in the hydrograph, which includes the mean discharge, the mean annual maximum, and the local thresholds. If a local threshold is not provided, it just says -99. And the aim of this table is then to give some context to the values of the discharge. Then the second table at the bottom of this slide provides the station calibration information. So this includes the calibration range, the maximum observation seen in that calibration period, and also the minimum observation. And this is, again, to help you have some information of how the post-processing should perform. So as I said before, we expect longer time series, longer calibration periods to provide better forecasts. Okay, and if you would like to share your data, you can contact CEMS Hydro. And if you would like to have your say, you can also provide information via the contact form. So just a quick comparison between the EFAS version 4 and EFAS version 5 post-process forecasts. So you can see that not only is there a new layout and the threshold information, but you can also see that there is a change in the behavior of the forecasts. So the EFAS 5 is showing a much greater peak than the EFAS 4. And in this case, the EFAS 5 forecasts are providing a much accurate representation of what actually happened. And you can also see that in this case, because the peak is higher, the inclusion of the local thresholds is very useful because not only does the peak go over the mean annual maximum, it also goes over the threshold level 1 from the local provider. So as I've mentioned a few times now, we need observations in order to post-process the forecasts. So if you would like to provide observations, then you can get in contact with the CEMS Hydrological Data Collection Centre. You can do this using this QR code or via the EFAS website, and there'll be links that you can contact Hydro through. And also, if you would like to provide information, your opinion about the upgrades to the EFAS hydrological post-processing or what you'd like to be seen done in the future, then there is a short questionnaire that will take about 3 minutes to do.